This is Kol Birama, the podcast of Congregation Ramat Raz 929 Tanakh Project. Join us each day as we study a chapter of Tanakh, building towards completing all 929 together. I'm Rabbi Yoni Zolti, and I'm glad you're here. Shemot chapter 16. The wilderness narratives present us with a fundamental interpretive paradox. Within the biblical corpus, there are two strikingly contradictory assessments of Israel's wilderness experience, creating a hermeneutical tension that demands investigation. In one perspective, the desert experience represents an epoch of constant rebellion. For instance, Moshe in Book of Devarim, speaking from the intimacy of lived experience as Israel's wilderness leader, delivers an uncompromising indictment of Israel's character during their desert sojourn. למן היום אשר יצאת מארץ מצרים עד בואכם עד המקום הזה ממרים הייתם עם אדוני. From the day that you came out of the land of Egypt until you came to this place, you have been rebellious against the Lord. His assessment encompasses the entirety of the wilderness period, offering no temporal reprieve from the charge of persistent mamrim, rebellion. On the other hand, there emerges a view prevalent throughout the biblical corpus that characterizes the period of the desert not as one of rebellion, but as one of devotion. Yirmiyahu, for instance, articulates this alternative remembrance. Zacharti lach chesed neurayich ahavat kililotayich lechtech acharai bamidbar be'eretz lo zirua. I remember the devotion of your youth, the love of your bridal days, your following after me in the wilderness, in the land not sown. Here, in his characterization, the wilderness becomes not a theater of rebellion, but a sanctuary of faithfulness, characterized by chesed and ahavat kililotayich, bridal love. This dissonance extends beyond these two paradigmatic examples, recurring throughout the prophetic literature in Yechezkel, Yeshayahu, and Amos. The resolution to this problem may lie in appreciating that rather than accepting a monolithic interpretation of Israel's wilderness behavior, we must develop exegetical sophistication capable of distinguishing between various forms of complaint, different motivations underlying expressions of dissatisfaction, and the crucial theological distinction between legitimate appeals for divine assistance and illegitimate expressions of spiritual ingratitude. To illuminate this distinction, I want to focus on two specific, seemingly identical complaints by the Israelites. One in our chapter, Shemot chapter 16, and the other in Bamidbar chapter 11. Both narratives involve complaints about inadequate food provisions, and yet God's response cannot be more divergent. Gracious provision versus devastating punishment. Analyzing these two paradigmatic examples can help elucidate the theological principles underlying all wilderness complaint narratives. I propose to examine 5 critical differences between these stories. The first difference is the geographical context. Both complaint episodes occur during periods of travel rather than settlement, suggesting that the physical vulnerability and uncertainty inherent in nomadic movement create the conditions most conducive to expressions of dissatisfaction. The first unfolds between Egypt and Har Sinai, while the second between Har Sinai and the eventual destination of Israel. Notably, we encounter no recorded complaints during the extended period of encampment at Sinai, when Israel remained stationary for nearly a year. The absence of complaint narratives between Shemot chapter 18 and Bamidbar chapter 11 corresponds precisely to their period of geographical stability, suggesting that the anxiety-provoking experience of movement through uncertain terrain, rather than inherent spiritual deficiency, precipitates these expressions of concern. And yet, nonetheless, there emerges a perhaps starker environmental transition precipitating the complaint in our chapter. Israel, we are told, has recently departed from Elim, described as an oasis which contains 12 einot mayim v'shiv'im tamarim, 12 springs of water, 70 palm trees. The transition from this natural abundance to the barren wilderness of Sin creates a psychological condition that explain, if not even excuse, the subsequent complaints. In contrast, no such stark environmental contrast precipitates the complaints of the asafsuf in Bamidbar chapter 11, suggesting that contextual circumstances may legitimately influence the evaluation of complaints. The second difference, temporal development. As Abarbanel identifies, the crucial temporal distinction proves hermeneutically decisive. In Shemot chapter 16, the complaints occur only 1 month after Bnei Israel have left the land of Egypt, while in Bamidbar, the complaints unfold a full year after they have left Egypt and after they have departed from the mountain of God. In the former story, Bnei Israel are recent slaves who are still transitioning from bondage mentality to covenant consciousness. Their complaints, while certainly imperfect, reflect the natural anxiety of those still learning to trust divine providence. In contrast, the second group has experienced Sinai's theophany, received the Torah, and participated in the covenant making ceremony. Their complaints therefore represent not ignorance, but rather ingratitude, not anxiety, but rebellion. The temporal gap between these episodes represents not merely chronological progression, but fundamental spiritual development that transforms the theological significance of complaint. A third difference relates to the identity of the complainants. Throughout the wilderness experience, the Hebrew text identifies the complainants in different terms. The biblical vocabulary ranges. Sometimes it's Kol Adat B'nai Israel, the entire congregation, to Ha'am, the people. Sometimes it's Kol Ha'ida, the entire assembly. And sometimes it's the asafsuf, the mixed multitude. These distinctions prove theologically significant, as the more specific and marginal the group identified, the more problematic the complaint tends to be. In Shemot, we read, Vayilonu kol adat b'nei Israel. The entire congregation of children of Israel complained. This suggests an organized, perhaps even collective expression from the covenant community itself. The terminology implies a broad-based communal concern rather than factional agitation. In contrast, in Bamidbar, we're told the instigators were the asafsuf asher b'kirbo. This term refers to the mixed multitude of non-Israelites who joined the Exodus. The difference here is crucial. In one case, we have an authentic communal concern, while in the other, we have a rabble-rousing mob agitation. The fourth difference relates to the substance of the complaints. In Shemot chapter 16, the complaint relates to elemental survival. The Bnei Israel say, Ki hotzetem otanu el hamidbar hazeh le'amit et kol ha'kahal hazeh bar'av. You have brought us out to this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. The concern addresses genuine famine, threatening communal survival. It represents an existential anxiety about basic sustenance necessary for life itself. In contrast, in Bamidbar, the complaint transcends basic sustenance to address culinary satisfaction. Mi yachilenu basar, zachaynu tadaga asher nochal b'mitzrayim chinam, et hakishuim, v'et ha'avatichim, v'et hachatzir, v'et ha'betzalim, v'et ha'shumim. Who will give us meat to eat? We remember the fish that we used to eat in Egypt for free, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. This elaborate catalog of delicacies reveals complaints motivated not by hunger, but by gustatory nostalgia. The distinction between survival and preference proves theologically decisive in evaluating the legitimacy of human appeals to divine providence. Finally, the fifth difference, which is perhaps the most revealing, is the manner in which each complaint characterizes the Egyptian experience. In Shemot chapter 16, while Bnei Israel employ hyperbolic language, they ground their comparison in survival anxiety. V'shiftenu al sir habasar b'ochlenu lechem lasova. When we sat by the flesh pot, when we ate bread to the full. While this description certainly romanticizes Egyptian provision, it reflects a natural human tendency to idealize the past when facing present uncertainty. The language, though exaggerated, addresses genuine concerns about sustenance and survival. Their complaint emerges from comparing the immediate threat of starvation with memories of adequate provision. In Bamidbar, however, they employ rhetoric that crosses from legitimate concern into demagogic manipulation. Their assertion that they consumed Egyptian delicacies for free represents profound historical revisionism. These individuals had endured perek, harsh labor, under Egyptian oppression, And yet now they characterize their slavery as a beneficial arrangement, which provided gourmet cuisine. This transformation of historical memory from oppression to privilege reveals spiritual corruption that prioritizes immediate gratification over historical truth and theological integrity. Moreover, their complaint explicitly disparages divine provision. Ve'ata nafshenu yevesha ein kol bilti el haman einenu. But now our appetite is dried up. There is nothing at all but this manna before our eyes. This dismissive reference to the miraculous manna as nothing at all represents not merely ingratitude, but contempt for divine grace. Thus, this comparative analysis establishes crucial theological principles for distinguishing between legitimate and illegitimate expressions of human need before God. Legitimate complaints emerge from genuine anxiety about survival. They acknowledge historical reality with appropriate complexity. They focus on basic necessities, and they maintain respect for divine character and provision, even while expressing concern. Such complaint invites divine compassion. In contrast, illegitimate complaint arises from a selfish desire for luxury, distorts historical memory for personal advantage, prioritizes pleasure over necessity, and disparages divine grace in pursuit of alternative provision. Such complaint provokes divine judgment and discipline. These distinguishing criteria provide hermeneutical tools that extend far beyond these two paradigmatic episodes. Throughout the wilderness experience, from the complaints at Marah and Massah to the rebellion at Kadesh Barnea, these same analytical categories can illuminate why certain appeals for divine assistance received gracious response, while others provoked devastating judgment. The enduring theological insight lies not merely in the historical particularity, but in the establishment of principles for appropriate human appeal to divine providence. They teach us that the legitimacy of complaint depends not simply on its content, but also on its context, its motivation, and the manner of its expression. In recognizing these distinctions, we honor both the complexity of the human relationship with God and the sophistication of divine response to human need, ensuring that our own appeals reflect the chesed nurayich that God remembers with favor, rather than the mamrim that provoked divine disappointment. Thank you for joining today's learning. See you tomorrow for the next chapter of Tanakh.